Hey there, this is episode 104 of the first 10 minutes. I'm Tony Parmenter.
I'm Steve Halliwell.
I'm Aaron Williams.
And I'm Iain McManus.
Ah!
Whoa!
Woo!
What's going on?
Fun,
hey
fun,
Iain,
fun.
how you doing?
It's madness.
How did you stumble your way into this Hangouts call?
It's a long story.
We have a special guest with us for this episode. Iain has very kindly and very helpfully volunteered his time and his expertise to contribute to the conversation, because this is a video games podcast where we play the first 10 minutes of a video game. Then we sit down here to discuss how well that game communicates itself to the player, both in terms of what the game is about and how to play the game. And in response to our latest listener poll, which you can find at the first 10 minutes on Twitter, you, the listeners, didn't really have a choice because we said we were playing Sea of Thieves and you heartily agreed with us. So we all sat down to play the game, myself, Aaron, Steve, and Iain, in a crew of 4. And this is going to be a bit of a mad jumble because we all have our own hot takes on this game and our own specific lens through which we played this 10 minutes. However, before we get into the nitty-gritty, we want to start with what you're all here to hear, the Wikipedia definition of Sea of Thieves.
Finally.
You may be interested to know that Sea of Thieves is a shared world action-adventure video game developed by Rare and published by Microsoft Studios for Microsoft Windows 10 and Xbox One. The game allows players to take the role of a pirate, sailing the seas of a fantastical world either solo or as part of a crew of up to 4 players. The game features both cooperative and player versus player combat. It was released worldwide on the 20th of March 2018 and received mixed reviews from critics. Hey Steve, this game isn't on Steam, so we can't do the Steam tags. Do you have any other pearls of wisdom for us?
I discovered that on the Rare Wiki, that Sea of Thieves is an upcoming multiplayer action adventure game.
Upcoming.
It's upcoming.
Yep.
It was announced at the Electronic Entertainment Expo in 2015 and will be Rare's first MMO.
Goodness.
Nice.
I also discovered that action adventure is a video game genre that includes video games that combine core elements from the action and the adventure genres.
Good to know.
So the 10 minutes here is going to be a bit different from the usual episodes because all 4 of us played the same game, the same session simultaneously. And as far as I'm aware, this was in fact the first time that any of us had played the game at all. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yep, it was.
Yeah, basically. I had launched it to make sure it would launch prior, but other than that...
I don't know. Bucking the trend there, Steve.
Yep.
Damn it, Steve.
I wasn't even responsible enough to do that. So all of this conversation that we're having is coming from the perspective of 4 strongly enthusiastic players who had pretty much zero knowledge of what was going on.
Yeah.
So possibly something to keep in mind. You may also wish to head over to our YouTube channel where you can watch a recording of the 10 minutes of play, which for the first time ever actually includes all of our voiceover chat. And that's kind of important to what the game is and how it is supposed to operate.
Yes.
So I was wondering if any of you are able to give just an overview of your take on what this 10-minute experience was, what stuck out to you or was most memorable to you about it.
My experience with the 10 minutes of this game essentially was booting it up and immediately acknowledging that this is a Rare game. So this is just a very quick moment of studio acknowledgement. This exudes the very specific type of charm that often exists within a Rare game, in that objects and interactions and emotions are sort of boiled down to their most absurd. But like warmly absurd. For a game about pirates and sort of sailing the seas, the first thing that I wanted to know was what it was going to look like to observe the horizon, and that's actually really early on in the footage. There's a quite a lovely moment of really this game's true nature as a toy and not a game. I said it early. Popping into play when I was observing the beautiful sunrise all set, and some asshole with a hurdy-gurdy came careening around the corner to destroy my serenity.
We're not going to name any names, but Steve, what is your take on this 10-minute experience?
I mean, I think it's kind of similar in terms of what the game presented to us being a thing that we play with, not necessarily a thing that we're asked to perform.
Yep.
Yeah.
But looking back on the footage that you compiled for us, Tony, I noticed a couple of times where like each of us is kind of exploring what is possible here, like what we can do. So like I remember jumping off a bridge and trying not to hit the other crisscrossing bridges on the way down.
But not because the game told you to, but because you chose to.
Just because I wondered, there was a crisscrossing of bridges with a small gap that I could see from the top. I was like, I bet I can get through there, and I bet that there's no fall damage if I land on water. And I did, and I succeeded. And I think I was playing a hurdy-gurdy for the entirety. But
you sure were.
Yes, good.
It was lovely.
Yeah.
And as a notable touch in terms of how, I'm going to say the word, immersive the game is, when your hurdy-gurdy was immersed in the water, the timbre of the sound changed entirely, and it was quite a nice little audio touch, which is indicative of the level of polish and attention to detail that this game contains.
Yeah.
I'm also going to take issue with a couple of things you said, Steve, but first I'd like to hear from Iain. Yes, right. Issues. I'm full of I words tonight. Iain, what was your take on the 10 minutes of playing this game?
Yeah, for me it was kind of similar. It was just all about that, like, it didn't tell us anything to begin with. It was just thrown in and just find out what all of the bits and pieces do and how they work together. And like it was just kind of exploring the environment. So I remember just running around the island, trying to see whatever I could see, and then just interacting with everything that had a use prompt to find out what it did.
Nice. Okay, so my take on this in terms of the appeal of it for me was the sales pitch is, do you want to be a pirate? To which my answer is, fuck yes, I do.
Yeah.
And it was pretty clear right from the get-go that the game was going to provide me with the opportunity to do that. But in terms of, I was really curious to hear your use of the word performance there, Steve, because I would say that this game is pretty much entirely performance, but it's a very specific kind of performance. It's not the game asking you to perform a very specific role, but it's asking you as a human to pretend to be a pirate with other people.
Yes, that's what I was meaning in terms of like it's not asking us to perform a series of tasks so that we can get a cutscene, or see credits or get points. Like it's giving us a tool set to role play, if we wish.
Yeah, this is more like improv theater, where it's like we are all pirates, avast, off we go.
I think also the thing for me is the sense of performing for each other rather than for the game.
Absolutely.
Right, like Uncharted wants me to play the role of Nathan Drake.
Yeah.
Sea of Thieves just wants me to be the kind of pirate that will make my friends laugh.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I think that's a critical point to how this 10 minutes unfolded, because the four of us are all friends and colleagues. And I think that is part of the strength of what this game can offer. Even though there is a chance to just be able to play with random people, we very intentionally made sure that our first experience of this was playing with people that we knew, who were all sort of already invested in the premise.
Yeah, I think familiarity and camaraderie is sort of a core essence of this experience, like a core component of this experience, you know. And I think having that with sort of with randos, there's an element of that that's removed. I feel. I mean, like that's, you know, that's a taste thing, but it also stems from the idea of like, well, we're pirates. Like pirates exactly. Are we, pirates we be.
So long-time listeners of the show will probably notice that we're going about this in a sort of a topsy-turvy way from what we usually do. So as I was saying earlier, if we try and do a blow-by-blow description of this 10 minutes from four people's perspective, it's going to turn into a giant shit show. And we prefer it just to be a show. Yep. So what I was thinking we could do is I'm going to paint a really broad strokes top-down picture of sort of like a summary of this 10 minutes.
Okay.
And if the three of you think it's worth drilling down a little further than that, then feel free to just say so.
Cool.
So in our 10 minutes, we all joined a game. We hopped on a ship and we sailed to an island, and I'm done.
Yeah, I mean, that's accurate.
Yep.
I think there was some futzing around on that initial island.
Yep.
That I think probably made up, like, from memory, 3 or 4 minutes of that time, probably.
It was nearly half of it, yes.
Was it?
Nearly
Okay.
half of it was getting ourselves organised or satisfying our curiosity before hopping on the boat.
Yeah, I think.
And then just over half of it was then sailing to an island, anchoring at an island, but
Yeah.
never actually leaving the boat to go to the island.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I need to add in there a moment of adoration and appreciation for Steve's physical comedy with the mouse. If you watch our video, please watch it for the final few seconds.
Okay.
Yes, please skip over all of my painstaking
great.
editing work to just go to
right
the final shot.
No. You have to watch the whole thing because the editing is what makes it work.
Yeah.
Alongside the movement. It's the gestalt of it, you know?
It is.
You're with me. You know what I mean.
Yep.
That's what you always say about everything. It's the gestalt of all.
It's the gestalt.
It's just
the gestalt shit. You know, it's the gestalt. Come on.
And Ian, was there anything specifically in my overview there that you found lacking?
Well, I think for me it was just that we like that thing of having just all of us had very different views on that initial bit. Like we all knew only our very narrow area.
Yep.
So like we all sailed to the island, but we all saw a small sliver of what was happening getting there.
Yep.
Yeah.
So that kind of reminds me that I wanted to ask everyone, did you feel that you fell into or found a role for you to play in this crew of 4 mighty pirates?
I mean, for me, certainly. I don't remember the exact order of things happening. I don't know whether, Tony, if you ended up on the big old wheel, the big turny boy at the top. I remember that bit happening and sort of me just, I don't know if we had discussed it or not. Just going like, well, someone has to be on sails then, I'll get that. And as I recall, that's kind of what I did for the rest of that time. Was mostly...
Steve, I believe what I said from the helm was, who's on sails? And Aaron's response was, I'm on cannons. And your response, Steve, was, I don't know how to do sails. I'm on music. And then you started playing the hurdy-gurdy for like the 8th time in 4 minutes.
No, that checks out. Yeah, that checks out. Yeah, okay.
So I'm going to say, Steve, that your role was boat jester.
Yeah.
Boat jester, I believe it was.
I was like, you know what'll make this go down real smooth?
So I want to pick up on that. Steve, you were playing a hurdy-gurdy in the game frequently and with gusto.
Yes.
Which might prompt some people who are unfamiliar with this game to ask, what the fuck is a hurdy-gurdy and why is it in this video game?
So I had gone through like all of my usual first-person buttons on my keyboard to figure out how to change between items or whatever, and I had found that there were musical instruments in one of the wheels of selections. Yep. And there's an accordion and a hurdy-gurdy. And if you select those and then press primary action, it plays a song for you.
It sure does.
So upon discovering this, that was all that I wanted to do, was to just run around playing music.
Why did that appeal to you so much, Steve, with all of the other toys that are in this toy box?
I think the reason why I gravitated towards the musical instruments is probably just that that's not normally a thing I get to hold in front of my first-person character.
Yep.
Like I frequently get to hold a telescope, a gun, a different gun, my fists, a shovel, less often, but still pretty frequently.
Or nothing.
Or nothing at all, in the case of like a walk around and talk to people kind of game. But a musical instrument, quite rare.
Nice.
There you go. Perfect.
So I was drawn to it for novelty. Yeah.
Okay, right. Ian, did you find yourself falling into or performing a particular role?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I ended up heading up to the crow's nest, partly because it's like crow's nest, I want to get a really good view, and just that's kind of been a thing that I just really enjoyed being up there, because it gave me this really great viewpoint of being able to see a lot more than I could, because I kind of found being down on the decks was really difficult to actually see much, and that was kind of frustrating. And just being up in the crow's nest, looking out for cool stuff or rocks to hopefully not run into, and slightly further away from the hurdy-gurdy music. Plus, there's nothing like the sound of a piano accordion coming from the crow's nest.
Sick burn. So, Ian, you've raised a really interesting point here because the visibility of the player who is in the crow's nest of a ship is far, far higher and far further than somebody who's down on the deck or at the helm. But the difference being that when you're up in the crow's nest, you have absolutely no capacity or ability to control the vessel in any way. So there's a division of responsibility and a division of labor that's happening here. And I was wondering if maybe you could speak a little bit to that.
Yes, I mean, that was one that it kind of early on, I started to realize sort of how important it was for me to be trying to communicate and also trying to communicate using terms that were going to work. So I had to remember that port was left. And various terms like that.
Yes, port is left, starboard is right, fore is ahead at the bow, and aft is behind at the stern.
And the big pedal makes it go forwards and sometimes back.
That's exactly it. That's exactly right.
Gotcha.
But this division of responsibility and labour and this division of information, I think, is one of the aspects of the game that I really admire. And that I found was quite potent and quite immediately obvious, even for 4 completely new players sort of bumbling about the game for the first time. Because when we hopped onto the boat and I was at the helm and we figured out how to lower the sails, the first thing that I noticed from the helm was that when the sails on the galleon, the 4-player galleon, were fully dropped, I couldn't see directly ahead in any way while the sails were pointed straight. So whatever we were heading towards at any given point in time, I just had no ability to see it at all without actually leaving the helm and wandering to a different part of the boat. So I think it was almost straight away, I just said, I can't see anything. I need somebody to be my eyes.
Yeah.
I think it was at that point, Ian, that you ran up to the crow's nest and were up there, I think, for the majority of the rest of the session.
Yeah, because it was, as soon as it was up there, I started to realize just how much I could see and was then experimenting with the spyglass just to see how far I could see with that. And just because they've created such a large and cool looking world, it was just also a great way to be able to see and enjoy things like, the sunset over the water.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And there's another aspect here to navigation that is sort of like a third separation, which is knowing where exactly in the world we were. And there is a map room on the ship, and I believe, Steve, you were the one who found it first or ended up sitting at the map table the most. I was wondering if you could maybe describe a little bit about what that is and how it works.
So on the galleon, there's a map down one floor that's a giant parchment stylized map on a table. But if you interact with it, it acts the same way you expect a modern video game map to work, like it would in a Far Cry or whatever, what have you. But you basically get you essentially get like a Google Maps top-down kind of look. So you get a little dot trail of where the ship is going. You can see exactly which way it's heading. And as you zoom in and out, you can see what all the islands are named, and you get grid coordinates and all that sort of stuff. As I recall, that map movement is actually visible to everyone. So if you have other players near the map, you can actually move the map around and say, we should go from here to here, and everyone can say, I, or whatever. But the thing that I remember trying to communicate back to you over voice chat about the map was going, yes, that island we're going towards is like this many units away, but I don't have a reference point of what that is because I'm looking at an icon for the ship, so I don't have a sense of how big the ship is in a grid.
Yep.
And no one but me had any idea what a grid meant.
I had no clue what you were talking about because I was seeing everything only from the perspective of standing at the helm. So we kind of had to, we very quickly fell back and well, it's northeast or whatever it was.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because you had a compass and I can see true north on the map.
Yes, I had a compass that's part of the vessel that's sitting right next to the helm, so I can see it while I'm steering. And Ian, up in the crow's nest, you don't have a compass as part of the boat, but you do still have a compass in your inventory. Was that something that you had realised at that point or not?
I think I discovered it in the inventory, but I wasn't actually making use of it in the crow's nest.
Right, okay, yep. Because certainly it's something that I found curious about this game because I have played a lot more than just this 10 minutes of it so far is that falling back on naval terms. It wasn't just that it worked, because of course it would, because it's a set of terminology that's evolved over hundreds of years for a reason.
Been refined,
But that the game had enough fidelity for that information to be an effective way of communicating what to do in the game. Yeah.
That was the thing that I think astounded me even more than that, is that I have been on a sailboat exactly once in my life, and it was in high school. But as soon as the terms like, I'm at the helm, someone needs to raise the sails and face them towards the wind, etc., etc., like all those things make sense to me.
Yep.
And I think they make sense to everyone, whether they've been on a sailboat or not, because a sailboat is a concept that you're familiar with from some other medium. Anyway.
And I think that's also a really important thing about the sort of the systems that you engage with on that boat. Accessibility totally seemed to be its design, with the idea of like there's very strong brush strokes being made, like literal brush strokes of air in the sky to let you know like that's the wind, and you just want to turn it in that direction, and then there's going to be this bit where the sail's going to go boom, and you will know that you are doing the right thing.
You get a visual cue and an audio cue, and they're both very juicy.
Which is really impressive, because these are complex maneuvers. Like, this is not easy to do in real life, but it's been boiled down to its essential Disney-like interaction to allow you to just get it quickly, because the playing with it is the most important thing.
Yeah, but again, even though it's conceptually simple, even though it has been abstracted and boiled down to something that's easy to parse, it's not necessarily easy to perform on the 4-player galleon, because they have split up how you actually do all of those things, so that it's far more challenging for one person on a 4-person boat to do all the things necessary to even just turn effectively and head in a new direction. We kind of veered off a little bit here from roles that we've found ourselves falling into. Aaron, I was wondering, did you find yourself falling into a particular role on the vessel during the 10 minutes?
I mean, kind of. So when I started this game, I went looking for toys. I went looking for things to play with, things to discover, essentially, that were charming and endearing and made me feel good. And so while everyone else was sort of taking care of business, taking care of everything on the boat, I just went searching to see what I could find, to see what other little hidden pockets of charm were around.
Any particular favourites that stood out to you?
I mean, much as it irritated me in the moment, Steve interrupting my sunset watch was comedy gold. I also found the vanity chest, where I discovered that I could apply facial hair to my character, which, as a character that I created that identified as female, I thought was pretty fucking cool.
So we haven't actually given a description of the pirates that we curated for ourselves. So Aaron, who was your pirate and what did they look like?
I went looking specifically for a punk woman of color, and I found one.
Nice.
And Audrey Morgan became her name. She has a scar running down one eye that is grayed out, and she looks grumpy, and that's my Audrey.
Nice. Iain, what about you?
So I spent a very large amount of time in the character creator. I was probably there for about an hour or so, because I was trying to I like the fact that you can't go and customize all the individual bits, but it meant that I was then trying to flip through all the combinations of not just the physical appearance, because the pirates get presented. Some of them are there, holding a barrel of grog. I think some were holding like a mug of grog. Some were playing with cannonballs, and I think I ended up picking mine. I think they were one holding a barrel of grog.
That's a good choice.
Yeah, and I kind of ended up with this one that kind of looks like a slightly grumpy, slightly drunk person that you possibly don't want in the crow's nest and might fall out of it. And thankfully, there is no. I don't believe there's any video footage of me falling out of the crow's nest. That's the important thing.
Steve, what about your pirate?
Can I rudely interject and say Steve's pirate is like the quintessential pirate? I'd looked Steve in the face and I knew immediately I was looking at a stone cold fucking pirate. It was incredible. Steve's character is beautiful.
Thanks.
Just a vision.
I spent 3 randoms finding him.
Magic number.
So yeah, my pirate name was Joe, and Joe's backstory is.
And Joe is beautiful. God damn it.
Yeah, you know Joe's a pirate, and when everyone's like, "What's up with that guy?" They're like, "Don't mind him. It's just Joe." That's all you need to know about Joe. Pirate. It's just Joe. Joe had like long, scraggly hair. It's a bit skinny. But you don't need to worry about Joe. Joe's fine.
Joe's Joe.
Well, thank you all for asking, but the reason why I picked my pirate.
Yeah.
So I had a very specific thing in mind as I was looking at all of the random character roles. A character silhouette that was going to be distinctive.
Yeah.
So I picked a very, very, very portly gentleman.
A vast pirate.
Who is by my estimates, approximately 4 Joes wide.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. You know, like my classics catchphrase: "Put poor people on a ship. You're gonna try and sail it."
Iain, was there anything particular that you noticed, most especially because you were up in the crow's nest and had a different vantage point from everyone else? How was the game giving you feedback about what was happening?
So, I mean, there was a lot of feedback coming from an audio point of view. So, like, anytime anyone was moving things like the sails, stuff like of that, I could hear those. If we, happened to start scraping on rocks, anything, I'm not that ever happened.
Never happened.
But had it happened, there was quite clear feedback on that. So I didn't need to be looking, because I like from the crow's nest, you also can't easily see what's happening on the deck below.
Right.
So I couldn't see where anyone was. So it gave a lot of feedback from audio point of view on that. And I've also sort of found that visually from the crow's nest, you seem to be able to see things better than you can at the lower deck, and not just because you can have a better vantage point, but the game seems to be doing something that makes those more distant things more visible from the crow's nest.
Right. So visual tricks in terms of level of detail and fogging and lighting and those sorts of things?
Yes, and in particular things like ships. A ship and an island at the same distance, the ship always stands out more clearly, and they had sort of, was starting to sort of learn of looking for particular silhouettes, and early on was just constantly scanning, looking for anything that was poking above the horizon.
Right. Aaron, how did you feel the game was giving you feedback in terms of what you were doing?
I'm going to make another kind of reductive statement. I felt
that's what we're all about.
That is what we do here.
Because it has to fit in 45 minutes.
We did say hot takes, so hot take it up. I felt a consistent sense of reward with every piece of interaction that I was afforded in this. Opening up the vanity chest was a reward when I realized I could customize facial hair. Opening up the equipment chest and seeing all of the musical instruments that were afforded to me, the spyglass, the compass, all of these things that were new gadgets for me to fuck around with in ways that would emerge over time to me. This entire space that I was navigating around, I felt a consistent, persistent sense that it didn't matter what I did, just that I did what felt right.
Okay, cool. And Steve, feedback from the game, your thoughts?
I was struggling to think of if there's anything that's jumped out at me inside the 10 minutes. I know that something that was really apparent related to the crow's nest outside of the 10 minutes was how when the seas get very, very rough and start blocking all your sight lines, even for the people who are on deck.
Yep.
That was a big thing for me. That I noticed as a point of like difference and changing environment, changing what we were going to have to do to play well. The other thing I think in terms of feedback, I think I was also outside of 10 minutes, but there's a number of actions you can take to communicate with your other pirates.
Right.
That's sort of beyond just voice chat. They were the ones that I think stood out to me as like the most like non-obvious forms of communication, other than just like things like, well, the sails creak. You can tell when the sails are full because there's a distinct state of animation they go into. So all those sort of things are there. But things like being able to show somebody else the map that you're holding, being able to put a mark on the map downstairs that somebody else can go back and look at later. Those kind of things are probably the ones that stood out to me the most.
Something I find really fascinating about this is that, again, that the game has the capacity for you to be able to get to a level of experience and coordination where you could use brief naval terms and it be clear what it is that you're trying to achieve and what you, as in you individually, have to do to contribute to accomplishing that complex task. So on a real vessel, on a real sailing vessel, if the captain were to say, come about, those two words communicate a volume of information where every individual person would then have to evaluate, what is my role in this maneuver? What is the state of the ship? What is the state of the weather? And what do I have to do and when and with whom in order to achieve this specific goal? And there is completely and utterly the ability for you to be able to do that in this game if you had enough time and enough familiarity with the people that you're sailing with. In other words, you have a crew, an actual crew that you play the game with. And that's something that I find super exciting about the way this game works, and it falls very much under the same broad umbrella, Aaron, as what you were saying about this game being a toy. Aaron, I was wondering if you could just maybe elaborate a little bit further on what you mean when you say that you're interpreting this game as a toy.
Well, so toys are things that we play with. I mean, like that's a simple explanation for it. Toys are objects that we interact with in ways that are playful, in ways that don't necessarily have a set destination. Toys are things that we engage with for the joy of engaging with them, and for the possibility space of what we could do with them. Our imaginations are toys when we started out as kids and, play whatever fantasy we wish to embody, or we wish to explore or discover. And this is kind of a version of that with set boundaries, but a version of that that's seeking to evoke that experience of having a possibility space in front of you that is yours to determine the purpose of.
Right. Anyone else want to bounce off of that?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, like, I'd agree. It definitely feels like that sort of toy. And I guess the thing for me is it's a toy that also feels like how it's set up kind of guides you to acting more piratey. In that, like, we can't really sort of see it, in that video, but like stuff that you started doing, Tony, with hiding treasure chests and everything afterwards. Like it's just as a natural result of what you do in the game, what other people are guided to do in the game, you become more piratey, and there always ends up being new things that you can actually seem to discover in it, because that's the thing of even after playing it for a while, still finding things to discover, like the bucket maneuver.
Do you want to elaborate a little bit more on the bucket maneuver?
So when your ship takes damage, it can take damage below deck or below the waterline or above it, and it will take on water. And so you have a bucket and you need to bail it out as well as repairing it. And at one point, you and I, Tony, decided, well, let's just find out if we can actually sink a ship by grabbing a bucket and keeping on pouring more and more water into the ship. And it turned out, yes, you can sink a ship. It took a long
time, but it did work.
It took a very long time, but it was a very stealthy way to sink someone's ship.
And if that's not a toy, I'm not sure what is.
Exactly.
Steve, your thoughts?
Here. It's a sandbox. It totally feels like a toy to me. There are goals that the game lays out when you go digging for them, but they're not what I think the game wants you to even be doing. Right? They exist, but what this feels like the game wants us to do is to quite literally explore the possibility space. Right? It's intentionally withholding what we can do, because it wants us to explore it and find out what we could do here. It wants us to discover how we can interact.
Yep. I think that's absolutely worth pointing out, Steve, because the game does not tutorialize at all.
Nothing.
In terms of what to do or how to do it beyond like button prompts when you are near enough to an object and it's giving you an interaction prompt.
But they're all the context-aware stuff, yeah.
There's no voiceover dialogue giving you instruction. There's no giant windows of text popping up to tell you what to do or where to go. And this is a big part of the reason why we didn't end up with a quest when we set sail. But it also, by not being there, gave us the space to be able to play with the game.
Yeah. Look, I think...
And with each other.
Yes. I think that social fun plays a massive part here.
Yeah.
But I think also, just circling back briefly to the quest thing, the only thing that quest gives us is a clear heading of where we should go, right? But beyond that, like there are many other perfectly valid methods of play here that don't require you to have a quest. You can still accrue currency without taking on those quests.
Yeah.
And if you are being a piratey pirate, like you don't need quests. What you need is other players to plunder.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so like what we were doing was perfectly valid. We just didn't know what the possibility space was yet. We needed to find out what we could be doing. It's just in that 10 minutes we realized that, it looks like we don't have a valid target right now. We hadn't learned yet that if you'll pardon the grandiose nature of it, everything is a valid target. Like, pick a point on the map, go there. There's something there that you will be able to do that is you role-playing as a pirate.
Yeah.
Like the quest to go to Chicken Isle to find out that the chicken you want isn't there is still a perfectly valid pirate quest that you can set for yourself.
Right.
I think just to bounce off of what Steve said really quickly, the game really makes a point of communicating its verbs to you very early on, so that I think like Steve said, you can be exploring what you can do, and what you could do. Sorry. And the game wants you to ask those questions so that it can hopefully answer yes you can,
Right.
Yeah.
And so I think with that in mind, like it's sort of, I think I said something to the tune of this earlier, but it's something to learn in this game, is that having an objective is a good thing to just kind of have in the bag should the exploration that you're engaging in wear thin at any point. Or you realize someone, like, say you plunder another ship and there's something really nice and shiny on it, and you're like, oh, I bet I can purchase that. We should go do some jobs so we can purchase this. This is the new goal.
Yep.
And again, for listeners who maybe aren't familiar with this game or haven't played it before, something that I did just want to point out is that in this 10 minutes, yes, we managed to hop on a boat, we managed to sail to an island, we managed to drop the anchor. But there are so many other layers and levels and experiences in this game that we haven't reached yet in the course of this, including fighting other pirates, fighting skeletons, engaging in naval combat. What happens when you go off the edge of the map? What happens when you're on an island? What are all the different things you can discover and do on an island? There's an enormous number of things that this game still contains that we have not had an opportunity to talk about in the context of this 10 minutes. However, with all of that in mind, does anyone else have anything they wanted to raise, or shall we do a 10-minute check?
I'm good for a check.
Yep.
10-minute check wins. So, gentlemen, does this game tell you what it's about?
No, but it does.
Okay, who wants to expand on that a little further?
The game goes out of its way to not tell you anything. Like, it feels like somewhere there had to have been a meeting where someone's
It's not an oversight. It's an intentional choice.
It's guaranteed at some point someone's like, what if they don't figure out how to sail? We should probably tell them how to sail, right? Right, and there had to be a discussion there where they're like, no, they will figure it out. We don't want to tell them how to do anything because we want them to figure it all out on their own, because there is value in everything being a discovery and keeping that like sense of wonder. And that goes hand in hand with this. We didn't see it in 10 minutes, but the punishment for failure in this game is generally very, very, very low.
Yeah, totally.
Right? The few ways that you can fail, it's barely a skinned knee.
Yeah.
Just like real pirates.
Just like real pirates.
And even in many ways, where you go when you do experience death is its own discovery and a reward to return to, right? Like the ghost ship. I can't remember the name of it.
Davy Jones' Locker.
No,
Yeah.
the
No?
Ferry of the Damned.
Ferry of the
Thank
Damned.
you.
It's called, yeah.
Anyway, that I think is what we mean by the game doesn't tell you what it is, but in playing it, it becomes apparent what the game is about and what the kind of things that you will be asked to do. But one of the things it's going to ask you to do is to figure out what you want to do with it. It is very much giving you a sandbox and some Power Ranger figurines and going, this could be anything. It's up to you and your friends what you do with this sandbox and these Power Ranger figurines.
And it rewards you for that discovery as well. Like whether
Yeah.
it's a bit of visual audio feedback or just, discovering, okay, I can shoot myself out of a cannon.
Yes.
Yes.
It keeps peeling back layers of things you didn't expect to necessarily be there.
And I think like one of the another great example of that for us was realizing that if you play music while you're drunk, you will play music like you're drunk.
Yeah.
It's horribly out of tune and you stagger around and potentially fall off the boat without meaning to.
Yes. Drunk Ride of the Valkyries is nice.
Yeah.
Does the game tell you how to play it?
Like, yeah, in not it does. Like,
In the same sense that there's a lesson here in that we didn't take a quest and what we were doing, we would ultimately learn was still a valid course of action.
yeah.
Yep.
In that
We did all the things that we needed to do to get to a destination to complete a quest. We just did it and learned it without having a quest.
Yeah. And that is a valid thing to do in this game. I think at a more base level, the game has very good context-sensitive prompts for what you could be doing when you walk up to something.
Yeah.
Right.
Like 95% of the time when you walk up to something that looks like you should be able to use it, there will be a use prompt and it will do what you think it does. Right, you walk up to a cannon and it's not loaded, the prompt will be to load a cannonball. Or once it's loaded, the prompt will be to fire a cannonball.
Yeah.
Like all the things that you do on any given element of the ship or on land, they all kind of do one thing, and they do it by you pressing the primary action button. Figuring out all of your items, I think, took us a little bit longer to figure out because we had to figure out how to open a weapon wheel. But again, that was still like a matter of, surely I have items. And I pressed some keys and I found them.
Yep.
But I mean, that's the thing with it for me. Like the game gives you, like it really clearly highlights all of the things that you can do. And it lowers the barrier of entry for that of knowing everything that you can do, but working out then fitting those pieces together.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think a lot of that stuff, part of it is just discovering those weird interactions like you can, lift the lantern high, but a bunch of things just logically make sense. Like nothing ever told us how to fix the ship, but we've got wood planks. There's a giant hole that water's coming through.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Makes sense. And that's the thing. Like a lot of it, I think, is tapping into things that are natural sort of affordances that we understand just as humans that have seen a thing that has a hole in it.
The other thing that I find really exciting is that as soon as you learn that something is possible, you then immediately start to go, what are all of the other ways or places in which I could use this thing?
Totally.
And that is the way that this game unfolds layer by layer by layer as you play more and more of it. If nobody else has anything else to say, I think it's time for the plugs.
Welcome to the plugs. I, Steve, and I'm sure the rest of the cast hope that you've enjoyed this episode. And if you'd like to let us know about
You don't
that
speak
enjoyment,
for me, Steve.
too late. Plugs, my domain.
Yeah, I hope you hated it.
So if you wanted to, you could email us and let us know how much you loved or hated it. The email address is contact@thefirst10minutes.com. You can also find us on various social media platforms, including Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, and
Very important, Instagram.
It's very important
Go,
Instagram
go, go.
channel. And Libsyn. Those are the major ones you'll find us on. We are also on some others, but we're most prolific on those. And in all those places, we are the first 10 minutes. We'd love to hear from you. Hey, Tony, can people find you on the internet doing other stuff?
They certainly can. If you'd like to get in touch with me personally on Twitter, you can find me at Kalinskald. That's KALINSKALD. I also do a bunch of Let's Plays on the First 10 Minutes YouTube channel, where I'm currently very, very, very far through a playthrough of Caves of Qud, which I highly recommend that you check out. If you'd also like to hear me talking to game developers about what makes them tick and why they do what they do, you can check out my other podcast, Downloadable Context, which you can find at downloadablecontext.com. Hey, Aaron,
Rundown Flamingo is the handle within which you can find me on Twitter and Instagram. I also occasionally, haven't for a while, but occasionally will write an essay on narrative design at pushingb.com for pushing buttons. And my collaborator and I have recently released an updated story on A Moment Between Us, which you can find on the iTunes App Store and Google Play Store. Just search A Moment Between Us and you'll find it. And that's me.
Hey, Steve! Where can people find you on the internet?
You'll also find me on that YouTube channel doing Let's Plays of stuff. I've recently wrapped up a lot of Alan Wake, which you can, a lot of it, just a lot of it, if you feel so inclined. And you can find me on Twitter at _Steve Halliwell or on stevehalliwell.com. Iain joined us today. Thank you, Iain.
Yes, thank you so much, Iain.
Thanks,
Thanks for hanging out.
Glad to be here.
How can people find you on the internet, Iain?
So you can easily find me on Twitter and itch.io. My handle is Iain, spelled I-A-I-N, the indie. And so I'm there on Twitter and itch.io, and also sometimes do Let's Plays or dev videos on YouTube where I'll talk about how I have built particular things.
Excellent. So thank you all very much for listening, dear listeners, and we will catch you again next time.
Bye.
See ya.
Bye. Later.